Good morning, everyone. All protocol observed. We were group one, dealing with who is in the space and what is being done. We acknowledge that we have quite a lot of stakeholders that are willing to work in the space. We've got traditional leaders, civil society, government, NGOs, churches, and a whole lot of stakeholders that are willing to work in the space. But the main key issue that we were dealing with is the resource allocation. That we've got these beautiful policies that are there, that are cascaded to all provinces, to all regions, and unfortunately there are no resources to deal with them. What is being done is that there are awareness campaigns to address issues of GBV that are being run, I think, throughout the country. And there are even innovations that traditional leaders have come up with, where they've got structures for the wives to the king, for female traditional leaders, and they've got sessions with young boys that are being taught about the dangers of gender-based violence. So there are innovations, but the biggest issue is the disconnect between the concepts and the resource allocation. We've got beautiful policies even in the panel. Colleagues were saying that we've got the best policies in the world, but unfortunately there are no resource allocations. You've got the acts that are there to empower our people, but at the end of the day they just remain paper. That they cannot do anything with. And I think one of the biggest issues that we discuss is that we do have forums of this nature. You know, the private sector will have them, government will have them, and but unfortunately the resolutions are not implemented. And why are they not implemented? Because there are no resources. So we end up having all these beautiful sessions. At the end of the day, without the resource allocation to make this work, it's not going to happen. We'll come back again, sit here, talk about the same issues, nothing would have happened. So what we are suggesting is that we need to pull together, because all of us are working in silos, and we are directing resources in our small corners. But if we were to pull together, ultimately, I think we will be able to address issues of GBV. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I'd like to say all protocol observed. Special greetings to my lovely queen, Matosini. We have actually discussed, and quite frankly and sadly, it's a very sensitive topic, because it's a topic that does not only affect society, it affects our families and our children. Therefore, that I have had experience of witnessing these issues firsthand. And one of the things I've noticed, and they killed me inside actually, is the lack of transport, the lack of clinics closing way before time, and when victims are due to get services, help, counseling, the clinics are closed. The after counseling, which is something that is not prioritized. I feel that when a victim of gender violence, be it rape, all genders, because gender-based violence is actually not focusing, we may say it's gender-based violence, but to me and to my fellow team, gender-based violence is broad. It's elderly, it's boys, it's a group of whole people that are victimized, rape and physical abuse. So what is it that can be done? We don't necessarily have to wait for next year for this to be handled. We need structures, church structures, school structures. We need parents to sit down with children, educate children from a very young age, because you can take a child to school, come back later, a child is abusing another girl, a child is doing A, B, C, D. I think first-hand teachings from home, very key. We have also played around with the idea of our culture being abused, because this is it's embarrassing. It's totally embarrassing. And if all as a community, if everyone can come work hand in hand, not only because it's a cousin, it's a child, it's who, because it takes a village to raise a child. It is something we can first overcome, and then the other steps gradually, I promise you, the percentage and the stats will drop. But our aim is that it goes to zero. We don't have to wait for the government, we will do it, we can do it.
Good afternoon, Wanda Bezita and all the queens. May I say protocol observed. I really am excited to be here. So, 3 things that we are proposing here. 1, looking at what is not working, right? We are saying we can improve on the journey to end gender-based violence and femicide through setting up peace tables from family level. That gives an opportunity for having role models. It inculcates the Ubuntu principles, and it further encourages each and every member of the society to know themselves as individuals, as well as how they can relate with other people within the community. Number 2, collaboration. Collaboration is the currency, and it improves coordination. There is nothing that we can achieve if we are not doing it together. It also maximizes the opportunity to fund the peace and security that we want to see in our country. Number 3, GBVF, ending GBVF and promoting peace is everybody's business. There is nobody who is immune to this. We are acknowledging those partners who have helped us to do the work of peace building, be it in private sector through the GBVF fund, as well as those partners who are doing some great work with the implementation of the National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security, that we found 6 collaborators last year doing this work, and some of those things was to award young women peace builders who are now peace ambassadors in their respective communities, and we would like to see more of this happening. Thank you.
We first shared our experiences, but now I'm just going to zoom straight to what we said it will help to address the GBV. We said 1, we have to come up with ways of dismantling the patriarchal thinking. Number 2, we said rural governance should be embraced. When we talk of rural governance being embraced, there is an element, and it seems to be much now deep-rooted, of a top-bottom approach. With us, you start from what we call a sub-headman. We call it a board. Then it moves to another level. People knows that. And once you come up with another thing, they start to resist. So if you intend to assist rural communities in addressing GBV, then you have to embrace how we do things. I think we are re-emphasizing that. We spoke of the method of research that needs to be done. Most often, in fact, let me not say most often than not, it is a tendency, and it has been done by almost everyone who undertakes a research in a field that requires what we call evidence-based research. But because now we use Eurocentric method, we have to change and use what is being practiced in that particular area. What is also of most importance is to do what we call indigenous research methodology. So quantitative research This is very important. We also need to establish programs. It is a tendency now of ticking the box by having an event and we think that everything is going to be sorted. Let us work together in having programs. Again, let us look at the GBV holistically. I think Unkosikazi Nosmanye Olomisa has mentioned that GBV does not only affect a certain gender, but it cuts across and it's everyone's business. In conclusion, let us be comfortable to talk about uncomfortable issues. One of them is us criticizing our own culture, the African culture. Thank you.
So I don't want to stand in between you and lunch, but of course this is a very serious and important issue. So a lot of what we spoke about has already been discussed, so I won't repeat too much. I'll maybe focus on, I think the last thing that our chair threw at us, which was, what does better integration look like? Because we've heard it throughout the day, integration. But it's not just integration between traditional leaders and government. It's between civil society organizations and, at the local level. It's between the donor community and the local level. It's within communities. So some of the not only suggestions, but best practices are to place importance or emphasis on intergenerational dialogues, right? Bringing the youth and the older generations together to learn from each other and promote that social cohesion as one of the structural drivers, as one of the underlying factors that feed into GBV. To strengthen relationships and find each other. Fortunately or unfortunately, we had a representative from the Department of Women. We gave him a hard time about integration, but on a serious note, they are doing important work. How do we find each other? But how do we make sure that it's in a way that you're fitting into what's happening at the community level as well, instead of imposing programs? So making it context specific. And I think maybe the last point I'll make is that traditional leaders are not fire extinguishers, quote unquote from Nkosi Juma, that they have to be involved meaningfully from the beginning, right? In a space of preventative action, not just response. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
The last group, what we were discussing is who is in the space. We identified quite a lot of stakeholders, as the other group had identified. I think we had the same topic. We categorized them into two: primary stakeholders and secondary stakeholders. Primary stakeholders being the communities. Those are the first stakeholders in this whole situation. And the leaders of the communities, we categorize them as the primary stakeholders. Then we moved on to secondary stakeholders, which are our government departments, specifically the security sector, which is your NPA, your Department of Justice, your SAPS, also the social welfare sector, well, your Department of Social Development, your Department of Health, and the local municipalities as well, local and district municipalities. Again, on secondary stakeholders, we had the civil society, being your NPOs, your NGOs, your CBOs, which are also there in the space as being stakeholders. Then, what are we all doing as the stakeholders? There's a lot of work that is being done, especially by the primary stakeholders, but unfortunately, it's not recognized. It's there, but nobody seems to notice it. Because of so many challenges that we have, we've already mentioned, resources constraints or challenges, if I can put it that way. But despite all those challenges, the primary stakeholders are doing a lot of work. Some of them are creating some NPOs, community-based organizations. You know, as Ungos had spoken in the morning, in churches, wherever we can find an opportunity to talk about GBV. Even if kusemcimbini, we will talk about GBV. But there's a lot of work that the primary stakeholders that are doing. The secondary stakeholders, yes, there is work. They are doing some work, but it's limited. We've got limited support, they give limited resources, and therefore they are making the work that is being done by the primary stakeholder or any other stakeholder for that matter. They are making the workload to be bigger and more challenging because of their limited support and resources. We all know, if you go to a government department and report something, how many days it will take for them, to go. I was just telling my colleagues now, I have 2 rape cases that happened yesterday and the day before yesterday. But as I'm sitting here, I've been asking the Department of Social Workers if they've provided the socio-psychological support to the kids, and they haven't been to my village. And I'm still sitting here, wanting to go and knock into their offices and say, how come, guys? In summary, we are lacking resources, but we also need to integrate activities of all of us as stakeholders. As a result, what the primary stakeholders are doing now, they are forming partnerships with the civil society, because those are the people who are listening to us, in terms of providing the resources and everything. And lastly, we are saying there is nothing for the communities without them. So anything that needs to be done within the communities, it must be done with them. It must not be done without them. Thank you very much.